Coming up, singer-songwriter Dave Hause has a brand new album, and it was produced right here in Nashville. We'll tell you more about it next. This episode of Connected with Kelly is sponsored by Pickers Vodka, proudly made in Nashville, Tennessee. So Pickers is a tribute to the musicians whose sounds fill the air in Music City. Pickers Vodka is distilled 11 times from non-GMO corn, and it's gluten-free. My new favorite is the Pickers Unplugged Vodka Soda. They're in cans. They are only 96 calories, 0 carbs, great flavors. You need to give them a try. Visit pickersvodka.com to find out more or to order online.
Seems like you're doing better these days, even though things are falling apart. I know it's brutal working minimum wage, just like you finished before you start. You're sick of feeling like I lost this fight, sick of weighing out the wrongs and rights, pulling out of here to clear my sights. Tonight, alright. Oh no, did it whip you apart? They told us we could be kings when we were damned from the start. Get my 65 to 10 and dry my sister's eyes and bury me in Philly when I die.
Hey y'all, it's Kelly. Welcome to this edition of Connected with Kelly. Today we are talking with Dave Hause and his brother Tim all about their brand new album, Blood Harmony. Now, Dave has been a staple in the Philadelphia area. He has been around town and always comes through Nashville and always is very well received. Love his sound, but this is the first album that he's had produced here in Nashville. And it was done by the one and only Will Hoge. Oh, so many questions to ask, and we're going to talk all about that new album right now. Let's get connected with Dave Hause. Man, and you guys are like working on this new project. I am so excited. I was listening to it. They sent me the little preview. So I've had the insider's track on Blood Harmony. Give me some scoop. How did this all come about?
Well, we started writing songs at the beginning of the year. We sort of figured by the end of the year we could go back to work, right?
Yeah.
So, or at least it seemed like that was feasible. And so in the beginning of the year, with that as a potential goal was to, go back and start playing shows in the fall. Like, well, we better make a record. And Tim and I had tons and tons of song ideas. And so we held ourselves to this discipline of pencils down Friday, we called it. So
Okay.
Friday, and you need to have work done. So every Monday we'd get on a Zoom and we'd each bring a song that we thought could bear fruit. And we say, okay, well, this is the one we're going to work on. And by Friday, the general rule for it was we have to be able to sing something on Friday.
Okay.
I mean, you can't go, oh, and then there's going to be this bridge part, and it'll go like, I don't know. We have to have something, because by having something, even if it is not great, then you can edit it.
Yeah.
But leaving so much undone is how you have dozens and dozens of unfinished songs. And an unfinished song isn't really a song. So we kept ourselves to that discipline every week. And then so by the time, I guess it was the end of March, we had like 25, 26 songs, because each we would turn to each other in a song. So once we really got cooking on that, it became really exciting. We determined that, patterns were emerging in the songs that I brought, and patterns were emerging in the songs that Tim brought. And we ended up with 2 records. One is Blood Harmony, my new record, and one is the record we're working on currently, which is Tim's record, which will come out next year. So that was kind of the way we got going on it. And then through the process, our manager, Alex, was like, you really should talk to Will Hoge, who lives here. He's a Nashville songwriter who's had tons of success.
He's our unofficial mayor.
Yes, he really is.
He's our unofficial mayor of Nashville. No lie. It's like Will. Everybody knows Will.
Everybody knows Will. And so he goes, listen, he's a little bit older than you. He's made a couple more records than you have. All of his touch tones are the same, like Tom Petty and so on. his wife's a therapist, my wife's a therapist. And Alex was like, just get on a Zoom call. He's really excited about the demos I sent him. I was like, you sent him demos? What? And he was like, just come on,
And this is where Alex feigns ignorance. Oh, I didn't know he didn't want me to send any demos to anybody.
Exactly. So we got on a Zoom just like this with Will, and he was like, look, I like that. These songs I really think are great. I really feel like we could do a great job. Why don't you guys come out to Nashville? Here are the players I'm thinking we could get to play on it. And here's where we could do it. I have a great relationship with Sound Emporium. This is Will talking. And let's just make a great, very rich sounding songwriter record. And within that first Zoom, I was like, okay, that's the guy. And Alex was kind of shocked. Our manager was like, really? It just took one call. I was like, yeah, I mean, he's Will Hoge,
Yeah.
Very charismatic and warm, like kind of a generous of spirit guy. And we were off to the races. He wasn't super pushy the way some producers are. He wasn't intending to put his fingerprints all over our songs. He was more, his thing was like, look, I wanted to be a basketball coach before I became a musician. And that's how he approached the whole thing. He was like, I'm just trying to get the best team together, and we want to get the best out of each player and make sure that there's alchemy on the team. And so he was just so adept at all that. And it was this incredible experience. We were in and out of Sound Emporium in about 4 days and had most of the tracking done. And then we did some overdubs and singing at the engineer David Axelrod's studio.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were into mixing. It was like really quick and really, at the end of the day, he was like, look, I just want you guys to come and have a great time. I want you to walk away from this experience saying that was the best recording experience ever. We went to Nashville, had a blast, got to play with these incredible people. They were all super fun. And I just texted him the other day saying, hey dude, all the promises you made came true. Like it really was that. It was just this wonderful, incredible experience that we had here. And like the city just kind of opened up its arms to us. It was incredible.
You booked the Will Hoge vacation package and it delivered.
Totally. Yeah. We got to even, we ended up at his house and had a great time with him and his wife and met his kids. And, he's got 2 boys that are right around like preteen, in that zone. And I have 2 little toddler twins. So we just had all these like common touchstones where he's like a few years ahead and was kind of like, it's going to be all right. Here's how it's going to go. So it was really cool. It was like, we've made a lifelong friend and
love it.
The creative energy was just awesome.
I want to hear, Tim, what you thought about the creative energy here, because I've heard this from so many people, especially artists that have worked in other cities, that have recorded in other cities. They've been in LA, they've been in New York. When they come here, they just really feel like there's something in the air. I don't know what it is. Nobody can really describe it. They can't really put their finger on it. I mean, did you guys kind of have that vibe? And did you feel inspired to write when you were here?
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, there was I felt like there was somewhat of a barrier of entry at the beginning. I felt a little bit like, I don't know if they're going to be into what we do. And I don't know if are you sure? Like, well, this is a big deal of a place. And maybe thought it was a bit inaccessible. And it turned out that the opposite was the case. It felt like everything just kind of aligned and things just came on quick and everything was natural and comfortable and welcoming. And none of those things that I actually do feel in New York, like, because I think it gets lumped into the New York, LA, Nashville triumvirate or whatever. But I didn't find that to be the case at all. I found it to be like those other places seem more a bit like snooty and maybe a little like
harder to crack.
Yeah, a little colder. And Nashville is just a warm. That's been my experience. I haven't made records in either of those places, granted, but like it was awesome. And we were speaking the same language within like 5 minutes. It was that quick, and then it felt like the whole thing was over in a blink of an eye, and it was awesome.
I think that there's a lot of that within the circles in the country music industry. And I think it's really interesting, too. I want to get your take on this because, Dave, I know in putting together an album, you've had, different producers, you've had different people that have stepped in. How does it feel to have somebody that's already been on the other side of it? Like, that's the one thing that I think is interesting with Will. He has this perspective of the artistry that he's already done. So he knows what it's like to go out and play a live set. He absolutely knows the feeling, of being in your shoes on the opposite end of it. Did that bring a different feeling in putting together Blood Harmony because he's coming at it with that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that there were a couple of subtle takeaways for me. One of which was be yourself. Like, come here and make a Dave Hause record. Don't try to come here and be a Nashville guy.
Right.
That was one of the things that he imparted, because there were a few songs on the record that I thought needed to be like these quieter, finger-picked, singer-songwriter moments. And he was like, we have those. You have like 4 of those or 5 of those. You also make rock and roll music, and that's you too. So he was like, let's really lean into that. And that's where that song Gary came from. He was like, this is a much more intense, it's not a ballad. This is an intense sort of anxious apology to someone that you and your classmates mistreated when you were kids. Like, let's do with the music what the lyrics doing. And so that was kind of a subtle takeaway for me. Was like, I got to be myself. I don't go to Nashville to make a Nashville record. I go to Nashville to make the best possible Dave Hause record. Mm-hmm. That was one thing. The other thing with Will was he has had every kind of experience in the music industry. He's been on a major label. He's run his own label. He's had a giant hit where someone took his song and made it number 1. He's had records that didn't do as well as he thought. Like, he's had every up and down, and he still does it with the intensity and fervor and respect that he did everything. And I think in that sense, like, there's an ease about him having gone through all that, that I was able to pick up on. I was like, okay, that's like the dignified way to carry yourself. And so that was a big takeaway for me too, because like none of it's that big of a deal to him. He's got fans in Vince Gill and Amy Grant, but they're like friends of his. Mm-hmm. And I went to see Amy Grant as a little boy, like on the Tree Torn Shoes tour.
Oh my God, I had Tree Torns. I had 2 pair. I had the white ones and I had the ones that were plaid. They were a big deal.
My sisters had all those shoes too. Yeah, we went to see them at the Mann Music Center in Philly, and I'm like, that's your friend? And he's like, yeah, she's a big fan of my work, And in the same respect, he had stories of like, turning down teenage. There was a teenage star who became a megastar that he was like, I can't write with a teenager, and then that person went on to become a very popular artist. So he has like great wins and some defeats. And I think in that sense, like, you get the sum of a guy who's lived his life in music. And that was comforting because I have that all too, like I don't have the number 1 hit, but generally I've done all kinds of crazy stuff when it comes to music. And so we had a kinship there, and yeah, it was really cool. It was like, unfortunately, like, the record's done. So now we have to come up with whatever we're going to do with Will next, whether that's make a record or go on tour. Like, we have to keep doing stuff together. that instant on.
Extended vacation packages available. Just see your travel agent. It's fine. We'll get it together. I do want to ask you guys, though, in putting this together, I've been having this discussion with a lot of people lately, and I think that it's so interesting because you, to me, fit right into this conversation. I have so many friends that we live and breathe and work within the country music genre. And then you have the Americana genre that is like kissing cousins to it, right? For lack of a better term. And then you have rock that's in there. And then you have rockabilly. And then you have, newgrass and bluegrass and all of these different genres. But I truly feel like in the last few years, all of those lines are just like a big blurred mess because most people don't want to put anything into a box. And I think it's so interesting with you as an artist and the music that you've done. Although it does lean rock, there are so many songs on this that I was listening to. I mean, North Star, when I was listening to it, I'm like, that's a country song. Like that to me could get played on country radio tomorrow and no one would bat an eye. So, do you feel like that the genre has blurred? Do you feel like you fit in a certain box?
Well, I think that it's blurred in a good way. It seems to be. I mean, I always feel a little bit on the outside of it for a couple of reasons. One, and Sadler Vaden played guitar on our record. He plays with Jason Isbell, and we got to know him and had a great chats about some of this. A lot of it was just talking about guitar amps and guitars, but we did get into this to some degree. And one of the things he pointed out was like, you guys have a regional thing. Like you're up there in Philly and New Jersey and New York, and that to us is like the big city. And I was like, well, that's funny because you guys are kind of Nashville and Alabama and Mississippi and places like that are really kind of foreign to us. And thankfully that stuff is starting to cross-pollinate. But like, I think the one thing to always keep in mind is, like you say, North Star could be a country song. Well, country was a building block for rock and roll. Mm. And so in that sense, it should kind of all be similar. Like country was here before rock and roll music and informed it, as did rhythm and blues. And so at this point, all these years later, for a quote unquote rock or, rock influenced or punk rock kind of artist, whatever it is I am, I'm trying to sort of honor the long tradition of American music. Like that's part of, to me, it's every bit as much about Willie Nelson or Bob Dylan as it is, the Clash or, I mean, obviously they're not from America, but I don't know, or the Ramones, like to me, these are sort of like, they're all playing rock and roll, which has seeds of country music in it. Like that was another outpouring from country. So I think in that sense, it all sort of makes sense to me. At the end of the day too, you want to try to make the song playable in any idiom, whether that's fast and loud, quiet and pensive. You want to keep them sturdy enough that you can play them different ways. And Tim and I have been specifically committed to that, I think, over the years. Like, all right, let's try it this way. Let's try it this way. And if it holds up, okay, well, then it's probably going to hold up with our audience.
Right. Tim, what's your favorite song on this album? I know it's making you pick a favorite kid. I know.
I would have to, now this could be recency bias. So it's always sort of what's the latest idea and what are we like super jazzed on. So it could be that speaking, but I think North Star. That turned up really late in the game. It was an 11th hour. Like we got a text from Will right before we came to Nashville that was like, hey, y'all don't do anything too musical this weekend. We've got a big week ahead of us. Kind of like rest up. And Dave and I were just like, well, we're trying to finish this song. Like we were like in the middle of like finishing the song and like that day or the day before or something like that. Dave was like, I think we might need to consider this. Because we kind of thought we had a finished thing and all the songs were done. And Dave was like, hey, I got this idea. And I remembered him bringing that up some months before, but it kind of just, it got lost in the whirlwind of all the other songs getting made. Yeah. And it was sort of, it felt like a huge mountain to climb, that song in particular, because we had somewhat of a direction, but I felt like it was, it was a song about Dave's boys, and I felt like it needed a little bit more than what it had in those, like, long before. And when he brought that just days before we went down to Nashville, it had that at that point. And we had, like, our muscles were kind of sharper and stronger by then after the songwriting that we were doing. And it just kind of fell out.
You called it a buzzer beater, right?
Yeah, it was a buzzer beater for sure.
Pull up 3-point line, shoot and score. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was great. So that one, I think it's hard for me to pick one over that, just because
Yeah.
the magic of it coming together in that way was so great and exciting that that's probably the choice.
Yeah, I sort of agree because also we've all seen music documentaries and heard the podcast where it's like, well, and then I went out to the parking lot. We needed one more song,
Yeah.
and I free falling, or you're like, what?
Right. Right.
And
Right. Right.
the myths of those things are so strong that as a songwriter, sometimes I don't even believe it. I'm like, get out of here.
Right.
But it happened. Like I had a therapy session on Wednesday, and my therapist was like, I was like struggling to change some behavior. He was like, well, you're like, when you're over 40, as soon as you get to about 40, you're like in a big ocean liner. Like any movement takes all this.
Yeah.
Like when you're young, you're like a speedboat. You can quickly turn and pivot. And I was like, hold on. And I just wrote that ocean liner idea down on a little pad at my desk because we were there doing therapy remotely. And that kind of stuck out. I was like, okay. And I had North Star just written on my whiteboard as like songs to get to. But again, we thought we had about 14 we brought to Will. And, I thought I knew what the record was at that point. So to get one and have it sort of like channel, I was like, Tim, you want to hop on a Zoom later the next day? And he was like, yeah. I was like, I got this thing. I think we can get it done, or let's try it. I got nervous energy before the studio anyway.
Yeah.
And it just kind of like gushed out.
Yeah.
And those are such gifts and they're kind of rare. A lot of this is just, working hard at the craft. And so when they come like that, you're like, oh my God, this is bigger than us or something.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see as much of like the sanding marks in the table. You're like, this table just appeared.
Right.
Whereas a lot of the other songs, you're like, oh, I remember working on that line and I remember struggling with that chorus or whatever. That song just fell out. But I think I've listened to Hanale the most.
It's beautiful. It is so beautiful. And to me, it's like, I want to go there. Like, tell me.
Have you ever been?
No.
Oh, that's the northern section of Kauai. Which
I've been to, it's crazy. I've been to Kauai. I've not been to there. I've not been to Hanalei.
Are you sure you didn't go through there? You might have gone through there by accident.
Maybe. I was there years ago, and I went to the canyon. Like we went through, we did three different tours. I was there for a month. I taught cheerleading camps.
Oh, no kidding. Did you go over to the
Yeah.
Nepali coast?
Yes. I bet. Did I go around it?
Yeah, it's at the top of the island. So
Okay.
like once you go around and get to the Nepali coast, you probably drove right through Hanalei.
Oh, it's just like when you're singing of it, I'm like, okay, well, just write that one down on the list. I'll get with Will Hoge, my travel guide. He can get me booked over there.
Oh my God, it's such a place. I mean, Kauai is just magic, and but really the idea behind that song is like anytime you get into flow with someone that you love, it's often on vacation, like maybe we should get rid of all of our life back home. Like maybe we got this all wrong. We could just live in a hut and wherever it is, we've all been to those sort of places and kind of spend too much money trying to get away. And then you get there and you're like, oh, maybe this entire endeavor back home is madness. And we just need to live closer to the ocean or closer to nature or whatever. So that's kind of what was prompting a lot of that yearning in that song.
Love it. It's so beautiful. And here's a question too, because in being here and having the experience that you had in the studio and seeing now this album that, has flourished and will soon be available for everybody.
Yeah.
When you take that experience, how does that change you in looking at writing? Because everything, I know we all take a level of what we've done and we bring it into what we're about to do. But with this being so different from what you've done in the past, does it change the way you're going to now approach writing for another project?
It hasn't. I mean, I think that the process sort of informed the way we'll go forward, which is write more songs. We wrote a lot of songs in a short period of time. And I think that, and we didn't do the thing where we like pick just the most catchy songs for my record. And, like we didn't do that kind of thing. So there's some songs that Tim's going to be singing on his record that are among the best of this whole batch. So I think if anything, the process of being disciplined about writing and showing up every day to do it, that will inform doing more of that. And then I guess like, it's hard to say, because you don't want to base what you do on what's successful and what's not. That's not really the way of artistry. You want to like keep your temple pure and just write what you think is compelling and exciting. And so I don't know, you don't really want the outcome to dictate how you move forward. It's more of just like sort of leaning into process, I guess. I know that sounds kind of like vague or something, but for me, it's about rededicating the efforts to songwriting.
But that is a true Nashville thing, like what you just said in the efforts, because that's how this town works, which a lot of people just don't go with. They're like, that doesn't work for me. If I don't feel inspired, if I don't feel like there's something I need to say at that moment to write, I'm not going to have a standing 8 a.m. writing appointment. But that's how this town works. That's what happens here. So it is interesting that in becoming disciplined with the process, you had so many songs that came out. My question, I guess, is like, in seeing what was possible in the studio, does that then change the way that you go, oh, I know we can do these things that maybe we didn't know that we could do before?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's empowering to because a lot of times when you're writing over, even if we're just writing here with a guitar, you can hear all the orchestration, you can hear all the stuff in your head as you're writing it, but you don't always get there when you make the full record. And in this, we did get there. And so I think, that's really empowering to know what's possible and to go like, okay, let's go further into that. Let's write whatever we want to write and really stay dedicated to that. And then we know where to go now to get the sounds in our head, at least we did it with this, so I think like having that avenue more open is pretty exciting.
I think to me, it sounds like you've spoken a certain language and they speak it in other cities, but this city understands your dialect more than any other.
It's crazy. I mean, and people have said this to me for years. You got to go make a record in Nashville. You got to go to Nashville. And I'd always be like, Nashville? Like, I'm from Philadelphia. What? Like, they're not going to be down with this, And really, it's just music, though. It's not about, it's about being sort of committed to the song and all that stuff that is the North Star of Nashville. It's like we're committed to the song and honoring the song. And that's exactly what we've been chasing the whole time we've been doing this.
Welcome to town. We're glad you guys are here.
Thank you.
Good to be.
Might as well buy a farm while you're here. Just plant some roots, man.
There's been some conversations. We'd have to convince our wives, who are very much still committed to Santa Barbara and Philadelphia, I think.
Yeah. I can understand.
But we are bringing them here for a wedding in the fall. So who knows? That gourmet popcorn might just do the trick.
That's all you need. A couple $8 donuts and some gourmet popcorn later. All of a sudden, you've got chickens in the backyard. That's all it takes.
It could be.
Oh my gosh, guys, thank you so much for making the time. Congratulations on everything.
Thanks so much for having us, and we can't wait to be back in the town to play these songs in a room full of people.
Oh, love it, love it, love it. The name of the new album is Blood Harmony. Check it out. So good. North Star is one of my favorite songs on the album, but I would love to hear yours. All the Dave Hause fans out there, let me know below in the comments your favorite song of his. Plus, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. Hit that bell. You'll be notified when we put out new episodes, and that happens each and every week. Until next time, make sure you're staying connected with all of the people and things you love the most. Bye.